Here we have one of the most misunderstood cameras available today, and with recent price cuts, one of the highest bang for your buck scenarios I can think of. Let's start with physical design. I've reviewed this exact body style on this channel half a dozen times at least, and if I had to choose, it's my favorite of all time. That is of course very subjective and will change drastically depending on the job. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this as a travel camera, but if it's a production camera we're looking for, this is a great place to start. The Ursa Mini Pro 12K's entire outer shell is made of a delightfully metallic magnesium alloy, which instills a lot of confidence in its reliability, but that sentiment doesn't stop with build quality. Everything articulates and functions in solid fashion. Things like the LCD feeling beautifully rigid and strong, the buttons having a clicky tactile feedback, and the ND dial being mechanical instead of a buzzy electronic system. In fact, maybe that's a good place to start. Like all other Ursa Mini Pro models, the Ursa Mini Pro 12K has internal NDs at 2 stops, 4 stops, and 6 stop reductions, all spun on a mechanical knob, which means the system is extremely fast and has less points of failure over an electronic motor. Over the knob's shoulder, we find the articulating integrated LCD monitor. It's got responsive touch capabilities, spans 4 inches diagonally, and puts out reasonable brightness. In direct sunlight, it might be tough to see. For a full rig, I'm usually running an external monitor anyway, but having the smaller integrated one for settings is great. And for stripped back setups, the screen definitely gets the job done. There are buttons arrayed all over the operator side of the camera. I can turn peaking on, change white balance or ISO, turn on off-speed recording, false color, preview LUT guidelines, and more, all without looking and instantly. There are 3 customizable buttons on the front and plenty more to cover everything else, and anything that remains is adjusted with the excellent touchscreen monitor interface. If I'm just a broken record, so be it, but I have to say, Blackmagic's UI design is by far the best. It's clean, logical, ruthlessly functional, and easy to learn. On top, there's a bunch of quarter 20s, on the bottom, there are a bunch of quarter 20s, and on the offside, a rosette. In terms of I/O, everything is familiar and more than welcome as usual. On the front, there's an SDI out, a 4-pin XLR power out, 12-pin Molex, and 2.5mm link. And then on the back, we find a 12G SDI out, 12G SDI in, and a third BNC for timecode, as well as 2 USB-Cs, a headphone jack, 2 full-size XLR in with phantom power, and 4-pin XLR power input. It's a wonderful selection of I/O, and one I've become spoiled by. As usual, the battery plate and lens mount are user swappable. The former can change from V mount and gold mount, and the latter takes B4, PL, or EF. A quick note on batteries, it looks like this camera pulls around 55 watts on my wattage meter, which means a 90 watt-hour battery would last about an hour and some change, maybe an hour and 20 minutes. Next, let's move on to the really interesting part. Blackmagic's in-house designed sensor measuring 27.3 by 14.25 millimeters, which is, mind you, a unique 1.33 times crop from large format, and knits together 80 megapixels to reach a maximum resolution of 12,288 by 6,480, and Blackmagic RAW up to 60 FPS, and 8K up to 120 FPS. Since this is a symmetrical RGBW sensor, it can perform in-sensor scaling without cropping in on the image, which means any resolution is available with the full sensor. In a second, we're going to move on to dynamic range and latitude. First, I want to take a second and say something about the sponsor of this video, which are my friends over at MusicBed. The other day, I was doing a thought experiment as part of the writing process of an upcoming video where I imagined what would happen if all of my tools disappeared overnight, everything. And what would I want to buy back first? What is top priority? So you have stuff like cameras and lenses and computers, obviously, but at the top of my list, I also put MusicBed. I think that proper music is as important to the video production process as anything else, and MusicBed makes it really easy. They have the best artists that are actually touring, releasing projects, playing shows, stuff like that. There's been times where I've been scrolling through MusicBed, just listening to music on my own, and have gotten inspiration for videos just from that. My Why I Don't Document My Life video has an ending that was entirely inspired by a future forestry song that I found on MusicBed. They're also very vocal about supporting human creativity. The licensing is super straightforward. If you're interested, you can get a 14-day free trial with my code in the description. Thank you to MusicBed for sponsoring the channel. Let's move on to dynamic range. I've set this up the way I normally have, where I find the clipping point and then I move down from there so we can see what the noise is looking like as we go a stop down at a time. A quick note, I always have highlight recovery enabled when we're testing Blackmagic cameras. This is because there are other cameras, like Red cameras specifically, that enable highlight recovery by default, and I think the whole point of doing a Latitude test is seeing what the camera can do, and so this is a feature that's available to us, and sometimes it does work really well. However, if it does weird color shifting, we're not going to count the stops anyway, so we might as well turn it on and see what it can buy us. And in this case, it actually does a really good job. Right here we can see if I turn this off, Gerard gets blown right here, and then actually a little bit on my face right here, this is starting to lose detail on the, let's get my qualifier right here. I'm losing detail. If we look over here, that's that part of my skin right there. If we turn on highlight recovery, it all comes back. Now we have all that detail. It's doing a great job. I don't see any color shifting. If we pushed this another stop, I think it would be unusable. But this will serve as our starting point. So we can go one stop down and it's looking great. Of course, I think the colors look really, really awesome. 2 stops under there looks good. 3 looks good. 4 looks good. I think we're starting to get some noise. If we go to something really dark like this NAS over here, got some noise, but it's relatively pixel level, so it's not distracting in any way. 5 stops of exposure latitude, and we're actually still looking really good. By the way, I forgot to mention, this is all in 4K 5:1. 5:1 is a really good compression ratio as far as quality goes, and I chose 4K because most people will probably be using this camera in 4K. 8K still has pretty big file sizes, and 12K certainly does. I bet if we did this test in 12K and dropped it in here, the noise would be a touch finer and it would look a little better. But if most people aren't going to be using the camera that way, then we'll just leave that for the next time around, perhaps. Here we are at 6 stops of exposure latitude, and we do have a lot of noise, but I think it looks really nice, and it's multicolored. It's not any specific color. If it was, maybe a touch more green than anything else, but I think it actually looks really, really great. And I already have a little bit of noise reduction here. If I turn that on, noise reduction works really well for some reason on these RGBW sensors. I don't know if I'm just making that up or if there's some optimization going on here, but it does an incredible job here. I mean, it's not even super aggressive on here. I'm on 17 on faster for temporal, and then we've just turned up a little bit of spatial as well. All the detail's still there, and it's all cleaned up. I would call this usable in the first place. Let's see if we can get away with 7. All of the colors still look fantastic. My skin still looks great. My hair is still brown. It's not turning super black. We are losing a little bit of color information over here. If we go back to here, there's just a little bit more nuance versus here. It's a little darker and we're losing a little bit, but I think the colors still look great. The noise pattern is super fine. I would call this usable. And again, the noise reduction does a phenomenal job there. Let's see if we can get away with 8. And yeah, there is a lot of noise here. It still looks really fine. I don't see any fixed noise patterns or banding or anything like that. This is a really great noise pattern. However, we are losing more color information. My hair is turning a little black over here. Let's turn on noise reduction. I'm going to call this usable, but this is pushing it a little bit. If this was a shot like this, where there's a human all but staring into the camera, this is going to look pretty bad. But there are a lot of shots where we could get away with this, so I am going to count 8 stops of exposure latitude. However, there is no way that we can make 9 work. It is now becoming a little bit more grungy looking. We're losing some of the color in this wood back here. If we go back, there's like this rich kind of orangey, rosy color to it. But when we go here, it's looking a little bit more drab. We can turn on noise reduction, and I just don't think that's going to work out. It would take some extremely strong noise reduction to knock that noise back, and I don't think that would result in a good enough image. So what's weird is the highlight recovery, you can't really expose and count on it. It's more of a, you get a shot, you bring it into DaVinci Resolve, and part of the sky is losing detail. Maybe there's a cloud that the sun's reflecting off of, and you lost some detail. Then you enable highlight recovery, and you can get it back, and it usually does an amazing job. But it is hard to recommend using it or counting on it when shooting. There's no way to monitor exactly what it's going to do, so you can't really count on it. So it's a little wishy-washy. I'm going to say Optimistically, you can get 8 stops of exposure latitude out of this thing. If everything is nailed and highlight recovery works in your favor, you could get 8 stops of exposure latitude. Most of the time, it's probably going to be 7.5. But either way, those are both great results, and that is plenty of dynamic range. Next up is Readout, which is extremely impressive at worst. In 12K, the camera reads out at 15.7 milliseconds, which isn't blazing fast, but decent enough. Most users will be operating the camera in 8K or lower, which reads out at 7.8 milliseconds, which is a fantastic score. The processing power in this thing is amazing. Let's jump back into Resolve and pixel peep a bit. I mean, what is there to say? There's another Blackmagic camera with great looking images coming out of it. It does look subtly different from some of the older Blackmagic sensors, or should I say, this is really the first Blackmagic sensor. All the other ones were manufactured by Fairchild or Sony or whoever it may be. This is in-house designed by Blackmagic. It's an RGBW sensor. It doesn't look that different. It still looks like a Blackmagic image that we've all gotten to know and love over the years. But there is, like I was saying on the Latitude test, there's a certain richness to it. It's a really thick, robust looking image. This is in 4K, like I said. The sharpness is phenomenal. There's plenty of detail in here. Not clinical, not over sharpened. There's just so much firepower here in terms of resolution that it's just oversampling a lot, or rather pixel binning or whatever the in-sensor scaling is doing. It looks fantastic. I think my skin tone looks great. I've done nothing to grade this. This is right out of camera. It looks healthy and nuanced. It's not shifting in any direction particularly. It's doing a really good job with this crazy nuclear neon orange color that almost always breaks in any camera. All these weird colors back here are looking reined in and nice. It's just a fantastic neutral looking image. I will say this sensor specifically, kind of like all of the Ursa Mini Pros before it, it does need light. It's not a no light camera. It's not even particularly good at low light shooting. Here's a frame right here, and it looks like this was recorded at 800 ISO, which is the native. I would recommend, like a lot of other users, to set the ISO at 400 to kind of offset the dynamic range a little bit more towards the shadows and away from the highlights. It does a really good job in highlights, especially with highlight recovery. Shadows is where it usually needs a little bit more help, but we are at 800 ISO, and this is with no noise reduction, and it does look really great. This is at 4K again, a little bit textured, but perfectly usable. However, this is at 800 ISO, so if you're planning on shooting at 3200 and getting usable images, it's not really going to happen. I have this image here that was shot at 3200. Let's turn this back to 0. So this is what this looked like right out of camera at 3200, and it's a really textured image. There's plenty of noise here. Again, the noise looks fantastic. This is not really the intended use case for this camera. You really need to be lighting your frames or have plenty of light hitting the sensor. This is not a go shoot a documentary in a sewer kind of camera, but that's okay. There's other cameras that are designed for that. In terms of having plenty of light, the colors are just always great. We talked about the skin tones. Everything looks natural and neutral here, and the story is really the same for blues and greens. It just unsurprisingly looks really great. As long as it has enough light hitting the sensor, this is a truly beautiful sensor capable of amazing images. With people who are unaware of the in-sensor scaling being scared off by the 12K resolution and the arrival of Blackmagic's large format Ursa Cine 12K LF, the Ursa Mini Pro 12K is slowly fading into the background. It's hard to say whether this sticks around or not, but recently Blackmagic reduced the price to $3,500 USD, and for this amount of power, that's a pretty compelling price. For less than the cost of an FX3, we can get a professional full-size body with internal NDs, I/O, and a ridiculous set of resolutions and frame rates. It's a weird camera for sure, but at the end of the day, one of my favorites. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I'll see you soon.